I don't know if something like this has been posted before. If not, here it is. All right. Yep, this is the Pyro Blaster. I haven't seen this, but I know this has been in the game for a while. And the reason I show this off right now is because this is likely the first primary weapon we are going to see in the game. I've seen a few ideas for primary weapons, and we might go over that later, but ultimately right now, I kind of wanted to focus on this weapon specifically because I'm not 100% sure that that I'm convinced, frankly, that this weapon is going to be any good. I feel like this weapon, like, it seems like it's cool, right? But if this weapon was actually, like, you know, how it operates for Rubric Marines, I feel like the Pyro Blaster could be very awkward to use. Essentially, it would be like a some sort of burst fire weapon that doesn't have a lot of range, but like even if you deal damage close range, it might not do that much damage. It needs to do a lot of damage. This weapon is obviously going to struggle with range, so I feel like the damage output for this weapon should be high, but for whatever reason, I'm just not convinced that this weapon is going to be added into the game in a better spot than what we see with the plasma weapons and the meltas right now. Like, effectively, this weapon shouldn't do as much damage as the melta, right? Like, I'm just not convinced that this weapon is going to be, you know, any strong, essentially. Now, there is a good post that kind of breaks down how they would like to see this weapon added into the game, and they would like to see how this weapon's, like, interaction with the game is. So, yeah, I'm going to jump into that post. I think they have some interesting perspectives for this weapon, but for me, right now, I would kind of like a different primary weapon, but unfortunately, well, I mean, you might like this weapon, which is fine. So, unfortunately for me, this does feel like it's going to be the first primary. Now, the Tech Marine, we don't really know what the devs are deciding to do with the Tech Marine. In fact, we don't even know what they decide to do with the next added weapon. But yeah, ultimately, this has been in the game for a while. Yeah, when you use it in the campaign, you just use it on swarms. Maybe that's a reason why I'm not convinced this is going to be a weapon that will be a game changer if added. We will see. We will see, but ultimately, I want to check out this post to see if they have any good ideas, if they could help me imagine how effective this weapon can be in operations. But for me right now, I'm just not convinced that we need a Pyro Blaster. I think we have a Melta, we have plasma weapons. But hey, you know what? Maybe I could be missing something here. But yeah, I'm gonna go jump into this Pyro Blaster post. I think they have some great ideas in how they could, you know, get this weapon to be in a good spot, ultimately. How to implement the Flamethrower to operations in Space Marine 2. We've been waiting on this weapon for a long time, and I know it's because it's a balancing act of making it a useful addition or blatantly overpowered. Yeah, dude, honestly, this is exactly how I thought about it too, and all I did was look at the picture and think to myself, well, we have meltas and we have plasmas. How can you make this weapon not, like, step on the toes of either of those weapons, right? I think this person also used the same terminology here, but okay, let's continue. Flamethrowers in games are often limited due to their insanely low range. Yes, they are very powerful up close, but very useless at any sort of range. And when enemies will pepper the heavy as he tries to close the distance, flamethrowers may feel like a poor pick. Yeah, I can imagine, you know, getting outranged, definitely very frustrating. Also is, you know, practically impossible to get your contested health back, but okay, yes, let's continue. It also kind of steps on the heavy Melta's toes. The Melta is great at clearing adds very quickly, but actually not as great against single targets. I would make it pretty decent at ad clear, but great for the larger enemies up close. Interesting. I mean, okay. That's actually, I like that idea. How would you, okay, first of all, I understand what they're getting at here, because Meltas aren't the greatest weapon against, like, Terminus enemies. The stuns are really good. So the Melta stuns against Extremists are really good, but their damage output is definitely lower than other weapons when it comes to taking out Terminus or Extremists. So I can kind of see the Pyro Blaster kind of fitting in that category. However, you know who else fits in that category? Plasma weapons. Plasma weapons are great against Terminus, great against Extremists, great against Majorus. Against Gaunts, I mean, it's good. It'll get the job done. Just charging up against Gaunts leaves them, like windows to kind of overwhelm you. With majors, you know, if you're charging up, obviously you should parry if they're going to attack you. But if you get one good plasma shot off, you're taking out that major. With gaunts, even if you get the plasma shot out, it could probably blow up a couple of them. But you might not take out the entire squad. Yeah, so ultimately, even if I have a plasma weapon, normally I just sit there and parry the gaunts if I can. But I mean, sheesh, yeah, see, that's why it kind of makes it a tough balance for the Pyro Blaster, 100%, because it just feels like the weapon's in the game already because of the meltas. But okay, let's continue. So I suggest 2 fire modes for the weapon. Ooh. All right, that's one way to make it feel different. Give it like an alternative fire. I like that. The standard fire mode we see in the campaign for up close combat. Okay, yeah, good idea. And then you can swap to lob balls of napalm, like a grenade launcher, to give it some range. Wow, I think this guy just sold me the Pyro Blaster. I wanted to hit my table, but it doesn't. Never mind. These would not be as powerful as up close. These would not be as powerful up close damage-wise, but give you some way to contribute when at range. Interesting. I like this idea. So essentially, what they're saying is 2 fire modes. One fire mode is going to be a close range fire mode with high damage. Close range, high damage, and then there's a second fire mode with lower damage, but it's kind of like a lob, projectile that I assume would be slower than a plasma. It would be slower than a plasma, but maybe a little bit more splash damage, but also a lob-like arc. Ultimately giving it a ranged option, but still limited, essentially by the lob. But yeah, the heavy plasma kind of lobs also, kind of, but I still think the projectile speed is fast enough that you can hit like far away targets. But yeah, the heavy plasma essentially does lob already, but it doesn't switch. It doesn't switch fire modes, and it doesn't have like a close range option. I mean, honestly, the heavy plasma, when you hip fire it, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, you know what? Ultimately, I like this idea. I like how this definitely feels different than what we see in the game. Ultimately, this doesn't feel like a Melta because Melta doesn't have any lob attacks, any sort of range options. And then it still feels like a Pyro Blaster because it's doing what it's supposed to do against gaunts and stuff, just making sure that you can get like a close range fire option that maybe has a little bit of spread. You know, acting as a flamethrower, essentially, of course, because, hey, it's a flamethrower. But yeah, I like this idea. This is great. And yeah, honestly, this kind of sold the weapon for me if they do something like this. But ultimately, if the Pyro Blaster is just an awkward Melta, that's going to be disappointing, you know? But yeah, let's go in the comments and see how people react to this, because ultimately, we are definitely going to get a new weapon soon. Is it going to be the melee weapon first? Probably, which would be fine. But yeah, they have to add in the Power Axe eventually, because I think the Power Axe is going on the Tech Marine, which we might talk about the Tech Marine, you know, in a couple days, because, yeah, there's pretty much all of the information for that class available, so that's nice. But yeah, with the Power Axe being on the Tech Marine, it feels like they're either going to introduce the Power Axe first and then the class, which potentially puts something like a primary weapon. It potentially puts primary weapon into like year 2 category, or like patch 10, patch 9, maybe probably not patch 9. But yeah, we will see. And basically what I'm expecting for patch 9 is new enemy, new weapon, you know. So yeah. But yeah, let's go in the comments. Let's see if people are excited for a Pyro Blaster, or if that's something they don't want to see added into the game. How about this instead? It's a power weapon. It can drop on level, and you can use it until it runs out of ammo. That way, they could just make a great weapon without worrying about balance. I guess that's kind of interesting. I think this would be kind of a disappointing way to add in a new weapon to the game. I think this would be something that's more like about a new operation. You know what I mean? Like if they add in a new operation, and then yes, you need to pick up the Pyro Blaster for whatever reason. But still, doesn't that feel a little bit too similar to what we have in the campaign? It would be kind of disappointing if they added in a new weapon, only for it to be like a 1-to-1, same use, same everything, same fire. Probably the same firepower. I don't know. Look, I get the idea. Just make it super OP, but make it temporary. That's fair. but it doesn't really leave me in a position to like make a build around it. And that's kind of where I want a new weapon to be added into the game. Like, that's where I want it to be at. Like, if they add in a Pyro Blaster, I want it to come with perks. I want to see what type of perks and what type of classes it interacts with the best. I would hate for it to just be like a weapon that you can just pick up in an operation, use it a couple times, and then it's gone. That doesn't seem very satisfying, you know? There's nothing to build around in that sense. I don't know about Warhammer, but real flamethrowers mounted on tanks have ranges of 100+ meters. Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's it. Maybe just make it like a Melta, but just give it more range. That's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Maybe it's a Melta that has more range, sure, but you kind of just hold down the trigger and it just continuously goes, kind of like the Neo Volkite, maybe? I mean, I could see that. That's fine. It doesn't hit as hard as the Melta, but it still has a large spread and a large range, maybe? That, you know, it still sounds awkward, doesn't it? It's kind of like, it could be like a visual polluter where you're just sitting there with a flamethrower and nobody can see anything. Because, yeah, 100 meters, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. That's an interesting idea. Ultimately, from what I've seen, people just don't want it to be the campaign version, which is fine. Yeah, this is kind of an awkward weapon to add for their, for their primary, because we haven't seen a new weapon for the primary. And not too many people are hyped on it, to be completely honest. I think, not a lot of people just assume it's going to be the campaign version. I think ultimately people just don't want this weapon to be underwhelming. They would like to see a primary weapon added into the game that feels, impactful, something we haven't seen before. But yeah, ultimately they would definitely have to cook on the Pyro Blaster. I think they would have to give it some alternative fire modes, give it something that is interactive, not like a just hold down the trigger and burn everything on screen. That's maybe might not be the best feeling. As far as obviously the flamethrower should be good, like to me. But yeah, as far as what they want to do with like the range or the impact for it, exactly what this guy's kind of describing. I can see just people have their screens lit up in fire and you want to be able to know where you're going. But yeah, making sure the Pyro Blaster doesn't just leave a whole bunch of visual pollution would be pretty key. So the Pyro Blaster, this primary weapon, needs to feel unique. It needs to feel powerful, and it also can't mimic the plasma or the meltas, because then it'll feel like too same. It has to be as unique as like the Neo Volkite or the Inferno pistol. Essentially, that's pretty much where I view it. And then obviously it can't be like a traditional flamethrower in the sense that you can just hold down the button and light up a whole room because of visual pollution. That would be very annoying if you couldn't really navigate a fight because you couldn't see what is happening because there's some guy with a flamethrower who is just using it. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is interesting. I think this weapon definitely has potential, but the devs definitely could add it in a way that makes it feel underwhelming. And still, I think I think they're gonna add the power axe before they add in the Pyro Blaster. So yeah, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this. If you have any good ideas for the Pyro Blaster, and thanks for watching.